I'm Jim Collison, and this is the Clifton Strengths Podcast Season 2, recorded on March 10th, 2023. In this Clifton Strengths podcast series, we look at the Clifton Strengths for Leaders report, one theme at a time, and today's theme is deliberative. If you're listening live, we'd love to have you join us in chat. There's a link to it right above me if you don't see it. If you're listening after the fact, you can always send us your questions, coaching@gallup.com. Dr. Jaclynn Robinson is our host today. She works as a senior learning and development consultant and joined me for season 1 of the Clifton Strengths podcast, where we looked at well-being at work, one theme at a time. I'm being very deliberative here today because today's theme is deliberative. Jaclynn, welcome back.
Thank you.
We are spending some time thinking about deliberative. Give us that quick intro on it. What does it mean to be deliberative?
Well, you are best described by the serious care you take in making decisions or choices. You anticipate obstacles.
That's interesting. As I was thinking about that, anticipate obstacles. What does that mean?
Oh,
Give
yes.
me an example. What does that look like? Do you think?
I like to think of this person as running it's like informal risk analysis. So
Mm.
before we get started, let's explore what these pathways are. Let's explore the risks that might be involved, any perceived obstacles that might come along the way, so that we can make sure that we are making that right decision.
hmm I think sometimes we think of this as slowing down to think about it, right? If we kind of summarize that, like, hey,
Yeah.
and I think sometimes this gets maligned or misrepresented in slowing down being a bad thing, right? Like,
Hmm.
oh no, especially among us activators, like, oh yeah, don't slow me down. We got to keep moving, and that the slowdown part may be minutes or seconds, but let's at least think about it before we
Hmm.
engage in the process. Let's be, certainly, for everybody it's a little bit different. When
Yeah.
we this season we're spending time thinking about this Clifton Strengths for Leaders report, and what is the power of this theme then in a leadership role?
Well, others know that this leader puts thoughtful consideration into all decisions that impact the department or the organization overall. Whenever this leader shares out strategic initiatives or upcoming objectives, then anyone around them knows that it was done by considering all factors and risks. And that level of care just really creates stability and trust in the workplace, as
Mm.
employees know that situations aren't just going to change very quickly. They know that a lot of thought has been put into it from that leader.
Throughout this season, we've been thinking about this idea, these 4 needs, hope, stability, compassion, and trust. Because you said 2 of them,
Mhm.
let's elevate that because we can to that section. Talk a little bit more about
Yes.
deliberative and this idea of it just expand a little bit on it, bringing stability and trust.
Hmm. Stability, because even one of the things that we do at Gallup, we've got some custom indices for engagement surveys, and we'll ask employees, do you trust in the leader, and do you trust that? I'm paraphrasing, but if an obstacle were to arise, that the leaders would be able to come through and save the day. Again,
Mhm.
paraphrasing. This leader is one of those that people would say, yes, we trust in them because we know that they are really thoughtful and considerate in the actions that they're taking. They're not just going to take an iterative process. They're not going to want to run something through beta. Or actually, they would run something through beta. They're going to, really make sure that the pathway they chose is right before acting. And so that creates a lot of just stability for
Mm.
employees who know
Yeah,
things aren't just going to change on a dime.
yeah. I want to spend, as we think of this through, that's the helps and hinders of this. I want to
Hmm.
think about the skill. This is one of those themes. I think there's a skill involved, especially in dealing with other people, on
Hmm.
doing this right and being successful with it. Because just
Yeah.
stopping things is not necessarily the success factor, I think, of deliberative, of just being that person who's always well, did you think about this? Did you think about this? Did you think about this? Right.
Yeah.
But the skill that goes in doing that in a team setting, going from the me to the we, thinking like,
Hmm.
hey, how do we do this in a team and make it work so we're not just frustrating people, because that can
Hmm.
happen too, right? And this, let's
Yes.
let's first talk about the helps though. How could this theme help in leading others?
I I love that they can offer a lot of patience and they can welcome perspective when it comes to conversations with fellow leaders or employees or their direct reports. They don't rush individuals into the decision making process for one, and they'd rather gather information and feedback so that all possible outcomes are reviewed and considered before moving
Mhm.
forward. So they really do, to your point of me versus we, they really can take that welcoming, thoughtful approach and invite in the we.
Yeah. A challenge in a group setting where they're ready to move, right? They're like, "Hey,
Mhm.
let's do," and it and you know what? And it's hard for those of you high in deliberative, this may be a hard pill to swallow, but sometimes even getting all the information and considering all the options does not guarantee success.
Mhm.
I think sometimes we think like, no, if we don't have everything, it's there are times we move forward and we get lucky and it works, right? And the other side goes, see, we didn't need, right? Again, going back to that kind of skill of inserting this in a way that where it brings the whole group along with it. Let's think through this and think
Yeah.
at the right time as well, knowing the right situation and the right time to be able to do this. Let's spend a little time thinking about that in that area. How could
Mhm.
this theme hinder the leadership of others?
I think you just hit the nail on the head. It's
Mm,
there's times when speed is more effective and necessary than thoroughness. And in those circumstances, this leader could really lean on their trusted, confidants who can think and act more quickly to offer great ideas and actions.
yeah.
So this might be those activators kicking in. Maybe they're strategic. Maybe they have high relator and they just have that relationship and deep rapport to know that that person's going to carry them through. But this is where sometimes that phone a friend can really come in handy.
Yeah, and I love phoning a deliberative friend. Like, "Hey, I'm stuck. Let's help me think through this a little bit. What kind of things would you do?" I also think
Yeah.
one of the beauties of this talent is knowing, again, going from the me to the we, how to
Hmm.
move it up in the cycle so it gets introduced long before the decisions have to be made.
Hmm.
So how do we get this deep thought into these considerations that need to be done, getting the group thinking about things long before there's a desire to move? Because you get a group,
Yes.
the group wants to move, and then you've got well, okay, but did you think about all that? Like the time for that was actually a couple weeks ago. And I think the maturity in this, the hindrance can be too late in the process. The help can be early in the process when everyone's open to consideration, right? Where we find
Yes.
help.
That
I don't know.
ideating phase. I could see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, and
Hmm.
listen, deliberative is a form of ideation in some ways that because you can think through all the things like what do we need to consider in this? And
Yes.
has it been thought about, right? Ideation and deliberative can live in harmony with each other in that situation. So
Yes.
those don't have to be opposites either, right?
True.
We're spending the season also thinking about this in combination with, this Clifton Strengths for leaders report and this Clifton Strengths for sales and then manager report that we have these role-based reports. Let's put the two together as we think about sales and leaders. What could that look like? How could we use those two reports together?
Yes. So this sales leader is one who would excel at carefully architecting a strategy for a client while articulating how they arrived at that strategy.
Mhm.
So the prospects and or the clients they're working with know that that plan was presented in a way where that sales leader sees that it's the best solution available based on the factors that prospect or client is presenting with, the considerations that they're trying
Mhm.
to just consider.
Yeah. Yeah.
Considerations they're trying to consider, I don't know any other
Yeah.
word,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the budget that they have. So this
Right.
level of thought placed into the strategy can help build deeper trust and rapport
Mm.
because, hey, this person listened to me and they're really meticulous in helping me think about how this is the best solution.
Well, trust is the cornerstone of the sales process, right? The
Yeah,
customer
yeah.
buys when trust is achieved. And so I love that you brought that back around from as we were thinking about it earlier of through this
Mhm.
strategy of deeper thinking, and then the customer knows, you know what, you've thought about this. I'm going to trust that thought and I'm going to go forward with it. Because the customer can't always get to that place on their own. They may not have enough time. They may need to move.
Yes.
I think about the housing market last year, and when it was time to buy, it was time to buy. Like you needed to move quickly, right?
Yes.
And to have someone who's maybe pre-thought, that's I think another superpower in deliberative is maybe they've pre-thought through all the things. They've also
Yes.
maybe pre-thought through all the objections that may come up during a sales cycle. Like, what are the objections they're going to have? Let's think about that.
Very true.
Yeah.
I coached a leader that would think through that. That was his best way of being able to prepare for a conversation,
Yeah.
was to think about all the different ways that conversation could go. High deliberative.
Yeah,
It's brilliant.
pre-work,
Yeah.
it's deliberative doesn't have to be in the moment. It can be pre-work that is done, thought that is done, knowing these questions are going to come up, and that person
hmm
with high deliberative has thought through those pieces. I mean, it certainly does have that element of action in the moment. I love that
hmm
idea of preventative maintenance.
Ooh,
Deliberative as
you've
preventative
got to
maintenance.
you've got to trademark these phrases.
Super cool. Okay, let's think about it in terms of leader manager then. What would come out of that?
Well, thought leader comes to mind when I think about this leader of
Yeah,
people.
for sure.
Their direct reports can come to them and know that when it comes to their individual development plan, a potential role change in the company, we're seeing some of those desires now. When it comes to their goals or even their key responsibilities, that this leader will help them think through all avenues and help them land at the best decision.
Yeah. I just got really comfortable when you read that, when
You
you
got real
said
cozy.
that. Yeah, it was just like it made me feel good thinking if I had a leader with high deliberative and
hmm
who is my manager, that providing that stability and leaning into that stability.
Yes,
Yeah.
I so
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah, no, I just
I
got
think
super
they'd be
comfortable.
such a fantastic thought partner.
Yeah. Yeah. No, right on. As we think about wrapping this up, any final thoughts? How would you put a bow on deliberative here? Maybe think
Well,
about it for a second first, though.
well,
Just
no,
kidding.
I think what we just talked about is something that deliberative could likely really lean into right now because we know learning and development in the workplace is what people are craving. They're joining because they want that. They leave if they don't have that. And so, if there is internal agility or movement, or they don't have a career development plan crafted yet, someone with deliberative would be really great as a manager to have that sit down conversation and say, let's just talk about the work you're focused on, because they can help them realign or redesign if necessary. Let's think about your career development plan. Have you thought about X, Y, or Z based on whatever that feedback is from the employee? If they're looking to move into a different department and try something new, they can have those discussions. And I've just noticed we talked a little bit about this in the mid show, but that certainly is something that is on folks' minds right now. Learning and development and what's next. I've coached a lot of folks this week on that and some engagement sessions. And so deliberative is just what a great use of your talent to be able to help people deliberate about what's next for them.
Mm, love it. Well, with that,
Yes,
let's
we're gonna
remind.
put
Yeah,
a stamp on that. I'm
I got
done.
I got
I'm
nothing
off
else to
my
say.
soapbox.
Love it. Well, with that, let's remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we do have available now in Gallup Access. Head out to gallup.com/CliftonStrengths, upper left-hand corner, choose the resources tab that's there, and then search for what you're looking for. In this case, put deliberative in. Everything we've done around deliberative will show up. Lots of resources available for you there. Great things to consider and great learning to take place in that. So you have an arsenal to work with for those of you high in deliberative, which I think would be very, very helpful. Stay up to date with all the following, or stay up to date with all the webcasts by following us on Eventbrite. Go to gallup.eventbrite, BRITE.com. Join us on any social platform by searching Clifton Strengths. And thanks for listening to us today. Appreciate you guys out there. If you enjoyed it, share it, hit like, subscribe, all those other things, all those social proof that you're supposed to do. Even the live folks, you can click the like button right now. That always helps with discovery and other folks discovering it as well. And thanks for listening. And thanks for coming out today. If you listen live, stay around for some post show. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.